Today we have a special guest. She is a mother, entrepreneur, social worker. Her name, Stacey Waller. Hi, Stacey. Thanks for coming on with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is such a blessing.
Thank you so much. So we're going to talk about a lot of services you offer, but before we do that, I would like to know, what did you want to be when you were little?
That's such a great question. It was so interesting. I remember just from being a very young girl, I always wanted to, and I don't know why I wanted to do it, because at this point I had never even been to Harlem, but I had wanted to become a doctor and to go to Harlem and save, I don't know what I thought I was going to be doing, save the world. It was so insane. But it was very interesting because, I had never been to New York, probably at that point, and definitely had never been to Harlem. I don't know if I saw it on television or how it came up in my mind. But that was my goal. That actually was my goal until I went to college. When I started college, I was actually pre-med and striving to reach that goal until I met, in my freshman year of college at Rutgers, one of the girls that lived next door to me in the dorm, she mentioned that she was taking social work classes. And I said, well, what is that? I had never even heard of social work. I had never met a social worker. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what that was. I said, well, what is that? And she explained to me what it was. And I said, oh, my goodness, that sounds so interesting. So I said, next semester I'm going to take one of those classes. And I did, and it changed my life. I transferred over out of Rutgers College, which is all a part of Rutgers University, and I switched from pre-med to social work, and I got my bachelor's degree in social work. I think just taking that first class, I realized that there was another way to help people. So I guess growing up, I had been led to believe being a doctor was the only way that I could help other people. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I realized that social work, that's really what you do as a social worker, is you help people, I immediately it changed my whole life. It changed my career path and, of course, changed where I was going with my future.
That is amazing. Definitely it shows how one person can make that change. So that... Was that lady, was that the classmate, or I'm sorry, that
So she lived right next door. So in the dorm, we only had rooms. Mm-hmm. So we were right on the same floor. She was actually in the room next door to mine. So I guess the doormate is what you
doormate, yeah.
And I'll never forget her. I can actually see her face right now. And she had grown up, I think, in Newark. And she had a social worker, so she knew what a social worker was, and mm-hmm. That's why she wanted to be a social worker. But growing up, I grew up in Williamsburg, New Jersey, and I'd never heard of a social worker. It was just a term that I had never heard of. I guess there was no reason for me to have heard of one. Mm-hmm. So when she mentioned it, was the first time in my life I had ever heard that word.
And so now you've graduated. And you're a social worker. Take me on a nice little journey of how you started Stable Community Services.
Oh, that's even, it's really the continuation of it. So, I think that sometimes you look back on life and you say, well, what made me do that, or how did that come to be? Mm-hmm. So I got my bachelor's from Rutgers. Actually graduated in May of 1990. And I don't know, probably in that last semester, it hit me that I'm going to get my MSW. That had never been the plan, but it was just okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I had gotten a grant, and I remember going to my parents, and it's just, I guess because my mom's always kind of wonder whose child this is. Mm-hmm. So I gone to my father was like, of course I'll help you. My mom wasn't so excited about it. She had said, I paid for one degree, I'm not paying for two. So I got a grant, and a professor came in, and he was just like, oh, there's some grant money available for anyone who's interested in working with seniors. I said, if this is a free way to go to school, I work with whoever you want me to work with. So I signed up for the grant, and I got my MSW. So actually, I went straight into an MSW program, and I got advanced standing. So I had my MSW 1 year later.
Wow.
And so, and what that did is it actually kind of set me on the path of where that eventually led to opening stable community services. And what was interesting when I knew, and I don't know how I did this, because I was 21 years old at the time, that I wanted to be an administrator. But unlike many of my peers that I had also gotten a BSW with, a bachelor's in social work, I knew that I didn't want to get, because the way the social work MSW program at Berkeley worked at that time was that you could either get a concentration in like health and hospitals, or you could get a concentration in administration, policy, and planning, or lastly, in direct practice. So I went direct and got a concentration in direct practice, even though I knew then I wanted to be an administrator. So I remember my peers saying, why would you do that? They all went administration, policy, and planning. But I felt like in order to be able to know how to administrate, how to run an agency, or to be a supervisor or director, I needed to understand direct practice. I needed to understand what I was managing. Right. And I think that was one of the best decisions I could have ever made in my career. Because I quickly went from being a therapist to, after I got my MSW, to being a supervisor. And I was put in many positions to lead and supervise at a very young age. I was already a supervisor, I would say, by the time I was 23. And I'll never forget, I was, the very first program I was a supervisor on was in Staten Island. And I had come back and doing some outreach out in the community. And this was when Ryan White funds and HIV was a big thing. And the executive director of the agency said to me, we're about to have a meeting, and you have to explain what you're going to do with this program. I don't know, maybe 30 minutes later, the people from Ryan White walked in, and they expected me right there on the spot to develop this program and what I was going to do with the funding.
Wow.
So it was just kind of like, oh my goodness, I've got to figure this out.
Right.
Everyone's sitting in front of me, which I was able to do. Thank God for those classes I had taken in direct practice. So I say that to say that, from very early on, I had been supervising running programs. And from that point, I went on to supervise many other programs throughout the city of New York, from working in the South Bronx to working in East New York section of Brooklyn, which are some of the most challenging areas in the country. And then eventually I decided to come back to New Jersey and live. After being in New York for a decade, I still continued to be an administrator, and then started to work. I worked in Jersey for a very brief period of time, and then I went to Philadelphia, and I worked in West Philadelphia, and worked with the homeless, which I would say is probably one of the most challenging populations that you can work with, because when you work with the homeless, you work with everybody. You work with people who have encounters with the criminal justice system. You're working with people with addiction issues, financial issues, educational, vocational issues, parenting issues, mental health issues, everything. It's all, not only you working with them, but you have them all living together. And I had started as a director of community housing. And that is where I would say at Traverse Aid in Philadelphia. That's kind of where I would say I got the most preparation to start stable community services. Because while I started as the director of community housing, it quickly evolved in me kind of taking over the continuum of housing, eventually becoming the director of programs, and eventually the acting executive director. And meaning that I ran not only the largest homeless shelter in the city of Philadelphia, but I was responsible for overseeing all of the staff in the agency. And in that position, I also worked with the other staff members to create what we call the stability model, which was a model that was used to help homeless families and individuals become stable and healthy. So when I left there, I felt like, oh my God, I've done a lot. I've done enough. I was honestly ready to go to Africa and just got relaxed. But our board president of Stable Community Services actually convinced me that it wasn't time to take a break, not time to go on my sabbatical, but it was actually time to open Stable Community Services. So I exhale, caught my breath, and I knew I didn't want to do homelessness. Why homelessness I think is very important. I knew that wasn't where I wanted to spend the next, decade or focus the next part of my career on. But then I gave some time, I self-reflected, and I really thought through, what did I really want to do? What did all of my experiences help me to prepare for? And I realized that it was really about creating stable communities, and that stability model could not only help us with homeless families, but it could help us to help individuals and families and eventually communities to become stable and healthy. So I took the stability model and created the stable model, which is the acronym for Stable Community Services, which is to help individuals and families to become stable and healthy. And that holistic model is skill development, transitional housing, addiction services, behavioral health, life enrichment, and educational assistance. And out of that, we have what we have today, which is Stable Community Services located in Burlington City. We started our agency back in 2012. We got licensed initially in adoption services, but now we actually no longer provide adoption. We've since then created our addiction services. We're licensed in addiction as well as behavioral health services. And now we own our own building, which was donated to us about 3 years ago from the owner of Lexus Cherry Hill. It was a wonderful gift. We own housing, and we are, I believe, truly, honestly believe, an asset to the community that we're in. We help a lot of people, and we believe that we're doing what we set out to do, is to help not only individuals and families to become stable and healthy, but we're helping the community that we serve to be a more stable community.
For sure. I mean, you're definitely holding up to the model, and that's definitely needed in any community. So, and it's also interesting how you said when you were younger you wanted to go to Harlem and be that doctor to help, but you've helped in so many ways as a social worker, and a decade in New York, and then even in Philly, and then now your home of New Jersey, and just providing a plethora of help, because basically in order to have a decent, productive society, you need to start home before you even get to the hospital, or even transitioning out of the hospital, to keep treatment going, to stay focused. And I definitely applaud you for the decisions that you made as far as your classes to help you, number one, with the Ryan White Foundation, putting you on the spot, basically saying, hey, what are you going to do with this money? We want to help invest. And being able to manage you, man, that's just amazing. And now that you have a whole building donated, that's also goes to show the great work that you've done. So I appreciate you. Now for some of these, how do you even manage all of this? And you're a mother too. How do you manage as much as you do with motherhood?
And that's a balance. Probably one of the things I'm working on trying to create or maintain is definitely about balance. And it's such an interesting question, because 2 years ago, I decided that I wanted to expand and add on to the things that we could do in the community. And I decided that I wanted to do, which I think is also another very important component of social work, which is the life enrichment piece. So I sought out ways to be able to open it beyond, people who were looking for necessarily convictions in mental health and housing, but for people who were just looking for more meaning and purpose in life. So I first I wrote a book on it. I started writing a book about 5 years ago. I woke up one day and I said, I was actually about 45, and I said, what does this all mean? And especially being a social worker, that becomes a question you normally start to ask, because after you work with, a lot of people dealing with a variety of different life issues, you really start to question yourself what is this really about. And even more importantly, how can I change the trajectory, or how can I help to change the trajectory of our lives and help us to avoid repeating the cycle? So it all led to writing the book, Reflective Living, A Guide to Life Enrichment, which then led to writing the second book, Serenity. And now I'm working on my third book, Utopia. And it also connects into what I created, Serenity Things, which I created about 2 years ago, and has really helped me to not only recognize my need for more balance, but it's also caused me to lack balance in many ways. But I think it's so important, because I think it's not only vital and essential for my life, but I think it's essential for the community, because the reality is, while communities need services, they really need to understand the goal. So not only communities, but as a society. Well, then Serenity Things is also located in Burlington City, and it really is reflective of the many things that you need in order to not only be stable, but to have a sense of peace and satisfaction in our lives. So I think, and along with that, it also helps us to provide an opportunity to recognize that we have to have balance and find balance. So I think through that work, I actually have been able to now start to find more balance, because I think when you're doing the work, it's hard to find the balance. But once you get to the point that you put things in place, you can really be able to then sit back and balance everything in a way that you initially planned.
Wow, that was a lot. In the sense of, it's definitely needed, and I've been to the place, and it's beautiful. And tell me more about your enrichment services.
So, and actually, it's not just the enrichment services, but like Stable, it also provides a variety of different services, because reality and all is that truly have serenity, which is a sense of inner peace that exists within us, and that's not disturbed by the things around us. We have to create a variety of things. One, most importantly, is we have to have our sanctuary. But part of that is we have our serenity spot. We also have to have our serenity pieces. We tend to live in a society, or we all live in a society, especially in America, where we tend to have a lot of things around us, but those things don't necessarily help us to have serenity or that inner peace. Mm-hmm. So it's about having those pieces that remind us of our need for peace. It's about eating healthy, so we have a cafe. It's about having the place where you can come and have just talk with others and be with others that are striving towards the same goal. So we have a center where we offer the life enrichment services, different workshops. So it's just about a variety of things. We also have what we call the Serenity Social, which is our shown on our Serenity channel, which is a place where people can learn. And then we have what I talked about earlier, our Serenity Stories, which is a variety of life enrichment books that provide inspiration and guidance. So I think it's hopefully a place that includes a variety of things that can help us to be more spiritual in our living. And that's really the goal.
Got you. So also, if you had to give homework to someone who is trying to find balance, what would you suggest? I
would say, I think that's a great question, and I would say I had to give myself that homework. And so I think and it's helped me to find my own balance. So that's why I think hopefully it would be helpful to others, is to think about how could you be more mindful in your living. And I think the reason I recommend that as homework is I think the reason many times we don't have balance is because we get caught up doing this, and this. Mm-hmm. And when you've got so much going on, it's very easy to get off track unless you take the time to really be mindful of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Because once you're mindful, you can think it through, and you can make sure that it has meaning, it has purpose, and that you understand how it all comes together. So my recommendation would be that we all take the time and do our own homework to really consider how we can be more mindful in our living.
Oh, that's perfect. I love it. And what is your mantra? What gets you through the day?
That's another great question. I've been trying to come up with a mantra for myself, and in my books I actually have all of these different mantras that other people have used, and one of my favorite ones I'll share, and then I'll tell you a little bit how it reflects my difficulty coming up with my own mantra. Mm-hmm. Is don't see something, and this is an old Caribbean mantra. Don't see something in the day and take a flashlight to go look for it in the night. I'm going to repeat that. And don't see something in the day and take a flashlight to go look for it in the night. And I think it's a very helpful mantra that someone else, that someone else created. But I use it constantly as I try to find my own mantra. But I think what helps me to, it's not quite a mantra, but it's a belief. It's something I say to myself to keep me on track, which is as long as I remain focused on the goal, I will stay the course. And I think that's really critical.
Yes.
Because it really helps me to keep focused. And I think as, kind of going back to that homework of being more mindful in our living, because of all the distractions, it's easy to get distracted. Mm-hmm. So I always have to keep reminding myself as I go through the day, what is the goal? Mm-hmm. And using that goal to stay the course.
That was the first time I've heard that, but it fits. It truly fits, and I like it. I'm going to add that to my arsenal, if you don't mind.
Oh, definitely.
And how can our listeners reach you?
So, that's a great question, too. Don't complain that I'm not on Facebook, and I'm not on LinkedIn, and, most of the things that most people are using today. So I would probably say the best way to reach me is through my Serenity Things website. You can go on the website. There's many places. I have a blog. There's many places there where you can comment, or you can email me at info@serenitythings.com. Again, that's info@serenitythings.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this with me, and this won't be the last time we talk.
Great. Thank you. Have a blessed day.
You too.